What are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
is us.
Us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it, the fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome to Closing Gap Podcast, the truth about black wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And you are tuned in to WATV 94.9 on your FM dial. Also, you find us on YouTube at Closing the Gap, the truth, as well as anywhere that you get your streaming and listen to your streaming podcast, you can find Closing the Gap, the truth about black wealth. It's the podcast that strives to give you the information that you need to live a better life. First of all, to be better servants of God, and in doing so, to manage your wealth and your finances in a greater way. How you doing today, Will?
Hey, I'm blessed and highly favored.
Amen, amen. And we are coming on another righteous and holy podcast show to you today. Amen. And today, the title of today's show is Reaping What You Sow. Reaping what you sow. You know, last week we talked about shelter in the midst of the storm, how to keep yourself covered, not be too concerned about the storms of life and the storms that happen in politics and the storms that happen in our financial lives and all of those things like that. Those are the things that we talked about on last week. And so this week, we want to talk about reaping what you sow. Principle wise, also you think about, there's a saying that says April showers bring May flowers. What does that mean? Well, it means that usually in the United States, we get a lot of rain in the month of April. And as a result of the rain that saturates the ground and it nourishes the plants and the flowers. And then in May, when the sun begins to come out, then those flowers, those fruits begin to bloom and begin to produce the fruit from the trees that they bear, right? And so that's the same thing we want for your financial life as well, that while you've taken shelter in the storm, there's been rain, but what we've been trying to do, Wilbert, is give the people the ideas that they need to stick with a plan, first and foremost, for your life with Christ, and then also with your finances, with your wealth, having a strict plan that you abide by, that when life throws you curveballs, when things change and go on in your life, you know how to continue to move forward because you have a plan that you have laid out. And then based on that plan, you know where you need to make the adjustments. That's always key, is you can't make an adjustment if you don't, first of all, have a plan. And today's show, we're talking about reaping what you sow. See, if you have sown and written out a good plan, then guess what? You're going to reap the benefits of that plan as you move forward. If you have had a conversation with somebody like Mr. Hamilton to put forth a good financial plan, then you are going to be able to reap the benefits of that plan no matter what happens in life. Whether a storm or whether it's sunny, you're going to be able to reap. Why? Because, as I just said, when it comes to planning, then you need the rain just as well as you need the sun. So you need the storm to be able to have an understanding of whether your plan can stand up against the test of time,
Absolutely.
Right? And so that's kind of where we want to dive in today. When we're talking about reaping what you sow, is your plan solid enough to withstand the volatility in the market? Is your plan for your life able to withstand the spiritual volatility that attacks your life? Do you have a solid plan to abide by, Wilbur?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's ironic you say that, and, you know, seeing what's happened, of course, in the first quarter of the year.
Yes.
Of course, the change in administration brought over some economic changes and some hardships, so to speak. And, you know, when we look at, you know, that term reaping what you sow, and April showers bring May flowers. And, you know, April brought a lot of tears to a lot of people's eyes when they looked at their 401k statements, when they looked at their investment statements, because of the volatility that was in the marketplace at that particular point in time. I mean, literally in one day alone, the first week of April, on April 3rd, I believe it was, the market alone drops over 6.5% in one day. It reached, what we call bear market territory, which is almost 20% down.
Okay.
Just within a week's time frame within the month of April. And, and those were the showers that April brought. And right on track. We always say what goes up must come down, but also what goes down will also go back up. And those Mayflowers came along. And, just in that short, month-long time frame, we've rebounded tremendously. So almost back to a break-even point. So, that goes to, what we talk about on a consistent basis, what's been our theme for the year, writing it down and making a plan, making a plan and having a plan for success of just staying the course. But we can stay the course if we got a plan.
Yeah.
If we got, a GPS giving us directions and, all of a sudden an accident comes about and a sign pops up says we got a detour.
Yes.
We may go off track for a little bit, but that GPS always gets us right back on track and right back to our destination. So we say might have been a little bit delayed, but we definitely weren't denied. So understanding that we got to stay the course, and downturns are usually temporary. We see them on a number of occasions. We can think back to 2020. We had COVID. COVID had a sharp downturn in the marketplace. Everything shut down around the end of March. And the market took a dip. Well, before the end of the year, I would say right around by October, November, the market had fully recovered and ended up being positive for the year. So that's one of those times where we're just staying the course, having a plan, understand why am I doing this? What are the goals and objectives I'm going to get out of this? What is my end destination? So I know to weather the storm. It's the reason why Mama said it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and they ain't got it. So for me, when I'm telling my kids to go out the house and I say, make sure you grab that raincoat. Why? Well, it's in the forecast, it's a slight chance of rain. And I want you to have that just in case there's some rain in the forecast so you can cover yourself and not get wet. That's what a financial plan does for you. It allows you to stay the course regardless of rain or shine. Nobody talks about the good days, but we all remember those bad days. And the bad days actually hurt more than the good days help when it comes to financial planning. Because I would tell people all the time, the market doesn't work dollar for dollar. So if you grow your financial account and your 401ks, you get to the point where you got, $50,000, $100,000, whatever it may be, $10,000. The market drops by 50%. Well, now you go down to $5,000.
Yes.
Well, you got to get double for your trouble to get back where you were. Now, that tells you how strong the market has been since the downturn has happened just last month in April, that we've rebounded to where people still have a positive outlook for the year when it comes to total value of their portfolio. At the end of the day, you want to remain in the black and stay out the red. Every year is not going to be an amazing year. Every year is not going to be a great year, but positive steps in the right direction, consistently doing the right things over a long period of time is what give you the success that you want to have in the future. Now, the success don't always look the way we want it to look. And I think that's where sometimes people can get a little bit off track. Well, I made 20% last year. Well, this year I'm only up 2%. Well, you're only up 2%, but you remember you was just down 20. And that we tend to forget very quickly, where we come from, so to speak. And, that we can think about that in life. Some of us forget where we come from, the higher we go. And remember, look, you used to enjoy bologna sandwich and spam sandwich and hot dogs. Now you're too good and all you want to eat is steak and shrimp. Every now and then you got to humble yourself and understand, because those habits, being frugal, being disciplined, having a plan, having a budget is what allows you to get to the point where you can enjoy the steak and shrimp more often. See, I'm a type of person, I don't want to necessarily have to have steak and shrimp just on special occasions. I want to budget and plan and prepare so I can get steak whenever I want to get it. But it takes me having a plan and preparing a budget. Now, I don't want to eat steak every day, but I want to be in position to be able to eat steak every day. So it's not about always, executing and spoiling yourself. that art of delayed gratification and just staying the course is what we need to have to make sure we can kind of weather those storms.
Wow. That's good. That's good, man. Because I too like a good steak myself, right? But as you said, you don't want to try to eat that every day, but you do want to have the option.
Absolutely.
Right? You want to have the option, and so having a good plan, being able to sow into your plan, then you'll be able to reap that type of harvest if you stick with that. And don't panic when trouble comes. That's what I hear you also saying, is that when we talk about staying the course, is that things are going to change. Life is going to have different volatility in it. But if we are able to just stay the course, don't panic in the midst of a pressure situation.
Absolutely.
Because life is about pressure, but how do we handle the pressure is the question. You said something weird. I want to kind of pivot to you said a bear market, and I've heard the term bear markets and bull markets, and you said something about like 20%. Is that what dictates a bear market, so, like a 20% down threshold?
When we see a 20% drop, that's what we say we're entering into, or what we're possibly entering into. Now, luckily for us, we entered into that category briefly, but we came back out of it. We didn't stay there. And that's a lot of the fear that's going on right now from an economic standpoint, from a lot of the so-called experts in the industry, is that fear of us dipping back into that bear market and falling into a recession, and really having an elongated time where we have limited to no growth. And that's always the fear of having that elongated time frame of declines and no growth.
Okay. And so I guess a bull market would kind of be the opposite of that.
Absolutely.
Right? It would be like a 20% uptick.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And for an extended period of time. So we have, like I say, it's kind of ironic and kind of funny sometimes when I tell people, and there's an old saying that says bulls make money, bears make money, pigs get slaughtered. When you get greedy, you get got. So it's always a way if you have a plan. And that's the great thing about our economy and our marketplace. In a conservative time frame, in a conservative portfolio, you can make money. In an aggressive portfolio, a bull market portfolio, you can make money. But it's really what fits your situation.
Gotcha.
So if I'm conservative by nature and I want to be in a more secure position, well, I have to understand, well, my ups may not be as high, but my downs are not going to be as low.
Correct.
Whereas if I'm more an aggressive side of things, well, I have to understand my highs are going to be higher and my lows are going to be lower. But if you average out the positivity in each one of those situations over time, you're going to win in both. See, if you go aggressive and be a straight bull, you're going to make money over time. And if you're a bear and you invest conservatively, you'll make money over time. But the key word in both of those bulls and bear markets is what? It's time. Do you have time? Have you planned to have time? Did you start your planning early enough? Are you thinking about a long-term perspective? See, too many times we get into investing with a short-term mindset, thinking that we're going to get rich quick, thinking that we're going to turn water into wine overnight, thinking that we're going to make sure that, we change the world and we erase, our financial position in a 6-month time frame. And that's not realistic. I tell people all the time when they sit out in my office, I say, look, you didn't get into the predicament you're in overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. It takes time. It takes a plan. It takes discipline and sticking to that plan. It takes having a long-term approach and understanding, what am I trying to achieve? What are my goals? So now they can say, I can focus on the goal and not the noise. See, all too often we hear everything going on around us. And that is partly because we don't have a relationship with Christ, because God has told us he's not the author of confusion. So we got to slow ourselves down. We got to dive into that word. Now he will erase some of that chaos. He will quiet the noise. Now we can actually hear what's going on around us. We can actually see the big picture and understanding that it may be raining today, but he's already told us the sun is going to come up in the morning. So just be patient and understand that I have a long-term approach. My goal is not for today. My goal is 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. So making sure that I can weather that storm and I stay in a position of consistency. See, most people panic and they listen to people that are not qualified and untrained and unlicensed when it comes to making their financial decisions. Because if in reality, if you think about it, there's a lack of African-American financial professionals in the industry. We're literally 1% of the industry. So it's not a lot of black financial advisors out there. So there's already a lack of people to actually provide the professional advice to our community. And when you take into account how many of the people that look like me and you are actually communicating with a financial advisor at all, let alone consistently, that drops the number even lower as to how many people in our community are actually getting the professional insight and knowledge to be able to be successful consistently. So if we don't exist in the industry, and if we're not communicating with the few of us that are in the industry, how can we be successful financially, individually, and collectively as a group? Because we can never be on the same page. So what happens is it puts a lot of our community in a position where the advice is coming from people that are untrained, unlicensed, uncertified, with little to no experience. And we're taking that advice and then we're wondering why we're not having success. That is one of the issues that we have in our community. That's why we talk about it all the time. We preach getting professional help. Seeking professionals that not just say they can do it, but people who actually have done it, have experience, have education, have licenses, have credentials, are insured, and, against, providing you illegitimate and bad advice. People who have what we call skin in the game. Ask the person giving you the financial advice, what skin do you have in the game to be giving me financial advice? If you lose money, how is that going to affect the person giving you that advice? Most of the times we're taking advice of people who have no skin in our game. And we wonder why we don't have success. You can't go back to that person and say, hey, this didn't work. Hey, well, I tried this and it didn't work for me the way you said it worked for you. Well, guess what? That person is not you. That person is in a totally different situation. That person is, you married, they single. You got kids, they got no kids. They got inheritance, you ain't got no inheritance. So guess what? Their thought process is going to be completely different when it comes to investing. So we have to understand that. And that's why it's so important to make a plan, stay the course, but also doing it with that long-term perspective.
Wow, that's great. That's great. So I'm reminded of Galatians 6:9 that says, let us not become weary in well-doing, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we faint not, if we don't give up. Right. So that scripture is our key scripture for our show today when we're talking about reaping what you sow. Is don't be weary if you're doing good. If you have a good plan, and just because the volatility of the market and what's going on in life, and there's a storm right now, don't become fearful, fretful, or get tired while you're doing good. While the plan may not show it right now, continue to stick with it. Because if you have talked to somebody like Mr. Hamilton and put together a great plan for yourself based on who you are and what your goals are in life, if you have a desire to be able to eat well each and every day, right, and to be able to live well in a particular neighborhood that you want to live in, the comforts of life, then you need to lay out a plan for those things. You need to, and that when putting a plan together for those things, that is the sowing, right? That is the planting. When we talk about sowing, we're talking about taking a seed and putting it in the ground and then allowing that seed to be watered and germinate to the point that it grows up, right? And so that's what you need to do. We need to do. We have to do. When we put a plan together, then we say, hey, okay, this is what I desire. This is the way I want my life to go. And we sow our money into that. Also, when we talk about spiritually, right, it's about where am I rooted and grounded in my spiritual life with my soul? Have I anchored myself in God and centered myself in the word of God and allowed my salvation be rooted and grounded in Jesus Christ. That's the key for us spiritually. So we're talking about faith and finances. How do you reap what you sow? Right? Galatians 6:9, don't become weary in that doing good. For at the proper time is the key. What Mr. Hamilton had said earlier is nothing is going to come overnight. These things take time. You have to plant the seed. You have to be patient with it. You have to stay the course and continue to maintain a long-term perspective in this. Don't look for it to turn over right now, but know that there will be some signs of growth that will come as long as you stay patient in the plan and continue to move forward. And when we come back from this break, we're going to continue along this path to give you some more tools to help you be prepared to reap what you've sown. Be back shortly. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton, and you are tuned in to WATV 94.9 on the FM dial. Also, you find us on YouTube at Closing the Gap, The Truth. Closing the Gap, The Truth on YouTube. And anywhere you stream your podcast and you get your listening on, you can find us at Closing the Gap Podcast, where we strive to give you the truth about black wealth. And today's show is entitled Reaping What You Sow. Reaping What You Sow. Well, we've been talking today about, putting together a plan, staying the course. Galatians 6:9 is the premise biblically for our show today. It says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we don't give up. And too many of us give up on our seeds that we planted.
Absolutely.
We don't take the time to allow things to grow. And then even after something grows and it doesn't grow in the manner in which we had the desire to do it, then oftentimes we'll just throw that plan away.
Mm-hmm.
And what we really need to do is just take the time to either diversify ourselves or rebalance ourselves. Before we go into the financial part, I want to talk spiritually in terms of that, Wilbur. For a moment. Oftentimes when we pray, we have things that we talk to God about and we pray. Mm-hmm. And those things don't necessarily work out the way that we have a desire to. Mm-hmm. Many times a person will just say, hey, that did not work. So I am not going to even communicate with God anymore. I'm not going to pray because it seems as though my prayers did not work, because what I was praying for and praying about still did not come to fruition. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes there are many reasons that our plans may not work, right? Sometimes it's because of us. Absolutely. And what we have done or what we have not done, right? And sometimes when we are praying about certain things, God does not provide us those things that we're praying for, because that's not within the plan that God has for us, right? And sometimes we are praying that we want certain things that are not good for us, right? When we were doing our recording last week, and we were doing the show last week, and we were talking about, eating habits, right? Mm-hmm. And we kind of talked a little bit about that today too, eating steak. But we were talking about like diabetes and health and these types of situations, right? Sir. And, we can pray about having good health as much as we want to and saying, God, I want to be healthy and, and I want to be well. But then when you have certain health issues and then you're still eating the foods that do detriment and more harm to you than they help you, then we can't get upset with God when our health is bad. We've been praying for good health, but we've not been doing what we need to do to have good health. And oftentimes also financially, that's what happens as well, I think, is we have goals, we have plans, and then we don't stick to the plan that you've given us. We don't invest in the manner in which you do, which you tell us to. We don't stay consistent. We don't stay the course. And as a result, we end up giving up on it and saying, hey, you know what? Nah, that investing thing is not for me. I'm just going to move on. But what we're trying to tell you today is you will reap a harvest if you don't give up. If you continue to plant the seeds and water the seeds and have somebody that you listen to for great advice and leadership, then you can have what you desire, because what you desire is not necessarily bad, but it's just that you may not know specifically how to get what it is that you desire. And there are going to be some steps that you're going to have to take personally, some sacrifices that you're going to have to make personally in order to get the things that you really desire.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the first step to having success in any area of life is first and foremost, just kind of giving your life to Christ. I don't, people always ask me because I don't have a client minimum. I never set a minimum as to how much money a person has to have in order for me to talk to them and help them. And the reason why is because I want to be a blessing and be a benefit to everybody I come into contact with. I really want to enlighten, educate. So even if, you don't have any money, if I can educate you, hopefully I can plant a seed to hopefully, get you to the point where you think about saving and you start saving. And really all that, comes back to, your relationship with Christ. I mean, I really base who I work with based off of more of a character test than anything else. If your character is right, that means there's a better chance that your habits are going to be right, which means there's a better chance you're going to stay disciplined to the plan, which means that you're going to have some financial success in the future. But if the habits are not right, which means the discipline is not going to be there, regardless of how much money you come into contact with, you're not going to be successful in the end. So for me, that's where everything starts. It starts with your habits, your relationship with Christ, because that's not only what's going to help you become successful and have financial success, but that's what's going to keep you successful and keep you having financial success. It's, I don't want it, like I said, like we talked about earlier, I don't want to eat good for a day.
Right.
I want to be able to eat good forever. I don't want to live good for a day. I want to live good forever. I don't want to, sleep good or drive good for a day. I want to be able to do it forever. So for me, it's about the consistency in the habits, because that is what's going to determine and dictate that we have the consistent success. Because a lot of times we get caught up, like you said, and we don't see the results as fast as we would like them. But, the guys already told us, my thoughts are not your thoughts and my ways are not your ways. I ain't on your time. You on my time. We've heard those adage, hey, you on borrowed time. Well, who you borrowing it from? You borrowing all the time you got from the Lord. He's granting you this time you have here on earth. So it's up to us to make the most of the time we have, not for him to give us the most. So he's going to give us based on how we handle the time that we are blessed with. So the better we handle what we've been blessed with, the better we are about being disciplined, being consistent, treating people the right way, being in the word, being committed to Christ, staying the course. The more he'll see us being disciplined and staying the course, and the more he will give us. See, we all want the house on the hill, but we ain't took care of the apartment that we had before we could get it. We all want to, we want to be blessed with the next, but not take care of what we got. So, we don't appreciate the dollar, but we want 1,000. It's all those habits that we have to build and develop over time. And that's what keeps us success, not just in our financial life, but our personal life. And even more so, we're talking about staying the course and on our planning, and you talked about, a little bit and diving into how to actually diversify your portfolio properly. And most people don't realize it, but proper asset allocation is the number one driver of consistent financial performance in an investment portfolio. It is the proper asset allocation, because people don't understand how much the world changes and how consistently the world changes. It changes based on who's in office. whether it's Democrat or Republican, because they have different goals, different objectives. It's different based on what the interest rates are doing at the time. So, real estate is great depending on, guess what interest rates are doing.
Yes.
That's a big factor in how much real estate is moving, is the interest rates. These are all classes and sectors of the market. So there's large cap stocks, mid cap, small cap. There's growth stocks, there's value stocks, there's international, there's emerging markets, there's real estate, there's the bond market, there's investment grade bonds, this is what we call junk bonds. These are all different sectors within a marketplace. Now, I just named all those different sectors. And I meet with people every day. And a lot of these people come tell me, Mr. Hamilton, I do it myself. I said, well, how can you know and be an expert on all these different sectors? And you have a job that you go to from 9 to 5. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be intelligent and you can't be well read. But tell me, when do you have the time to now execute consistently? Now, you may win at certain times because our dead clock is right twice a day. But to consistently win, it's understanding how to have proper asset allocation based on economic, political, interest rate, all these different factors that come about and that change periodically. So being able to be fluid and understand what asset classes and what areas and sectors of the market I need to be in consistently, that is what drives my portfolio to consistently be correct, consistently have growth, consistently have gains, consistently win. So I don't want to be a guy who's a home run hitter. Because some of your greatest home run hitters also struck out more than everybody else. I want to be in a position where I'm on base all the time. So do you want to be the Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, or do you want to be the Tony Gwynn? Somebody who was always on base, always scoring runs. So when you look at the RBI numbers and the total runs scored, you look and see who had more. What matters is the number of times you cross home plate. Not how you get across home plate, but the number of times you cross home plate. So all too often, I think we get enamored with being able to say, well, I did it myself. Well, is it more important that you say you did it yourself? Or is it more important that you do it? So we get caught up in wanting to be the captain of the ship at all times, wanting to always be the one in control. Well, guess what? Your most successful people in the world had to give up control in order to be successful. I don't care whether it's Jeff Bezos. I don't care whether it's Elon Musk. I don't care whether it was Steve Jobs or whoever you want to talk about. Any person that's been successful, they will tell you one of the biggest hurdles they had to climb and get over was learning to take a step back and trust the people around them to do their job and letting go and letting God. But I can't let go and let God if I don't trust God. See, if you don't trust God and you don't trust yourself, you're never going to trust anybody else. And that's one of our big issues that we have in the community, is that lack of trust always tends to rear its ugly head when we talk about, okay, why we're doing what we're doing. And when we're talking about, and I'm talking to clients about diversifying the portfolios and, well, when do you rebalance? Well, we rebalance as much as needed. Because guess what? If the market is more volatile, we may rebalance the portfolios every week. If the market is pretty consistent, we may rebalance them once a month. But the key is to be watching. So we make sure we know when we need to rebalance. The problem that a lot of people have is their portfolios are not diversified enough. And they never get a rebalance because they're never getting professional help and they're never getting a professional set of eyes to look at it. And it's kind of like going to the eye doctor. A lot of people don't go to the eye doctor enough. But as you get older, your eyesight usually don't get better. It may not change drastically over a short period of time. But if you go 5 years or 10 years from the time you've gone to the doctor, you'll realize, guess what? The words on the bottom of that list, they got a little bit blurrier and a little bit blurrier. And now you didn't notice the change because it was gradual. But your eyesight has gotten worse. And that's what a lot of times is happening in our portfolios. No one is there checking the eyesight. Nobody's there looking, evaluating to see, Are you balanced enough? Have you rebalanced your portfolio? Have you diversified? Have you reallocated? Because a lot has happened just in the last couple of years from interest rates, from economic and political standpoint on what areas of the market are performing the best. And we have to make sure that we're getting the proper access to information to know what to do, when to do, and exactly how to do it.
Wow, that's excellent, man. As you were saying that, Wilbert, I turned to Ecclesiastes chapter 11, and those first 6 verses also really talk to diversification, rebalancing, and even though it's scripture, but also it talks really about the sowing and the reaping in here, right? Verse 1 talks about cast your bread upon the waters and you shall find it after many days. It's saying that, okay, plant it, let it go, and over time you'll find it. It'll come back to you, right? And then verse 2 talks about, says to give a portion into 7 and also 8, because you don't know what type of evil shall be on the earth. And that verse 2 of chapter 11 really deals with diversification, right? Having a diverse portfolio. It's saying that, hey, don't just put everything in one thing. It says put your ventures in 7 different places, maybe even 8, right? Because you don't really know what's going to happen out here. So this scripture of Ecclesiastes chapter 11 and 2 just talks about volatility, as you just talked about, right? It talks about how to make sure that you still will be able to reap no matter what happens in life, no matter whether there's a storm, whether it's sunny. If you have your investments in some of those places that you named earlier, all of those different asset classes, if your money is spread out in those places, then the likelihood of you reaping, no matter what market volatility comes, is higher. Correct. Right? You have a greater chance of getting a reward back, a harvest back from those things, where you may be down on one side, then another one may be up.
Absolutely.
And so, so I appreciate you bringing that to bear for us today, because that is very important. And I want the people to even realize that not only is Mr. Hamilton saying that from an investment strategy, but the Bible speaks to these things, that you need to be diversified, that when you are planting seeds and striving to reap harvest, you need to have that understanding as well. And then verse 4 in chapter 11 goes on and speaks to, don't observe the wind. Don't try to pay attention and look at the wind and look at the clouds, as you talk about it all the time, about trying to time the market. Right? And that's what this text is saying in Ecclesiastes 11 and 4. It's saying, if you observe the wind, then you won't sow. Absolutely. That's what this says. It says, if you observe the wind, you won't sow. And if you regard the clouds, you shall not reap. The title of our show today is reaping, sowing and reaping. And you can't try to time everything. You have to have trust in God, as you led off with, Wilbur, that if you are praying and you are centering yourself in God, and then God has led you to a person like Mr. Hamilton or anybody else, as we told you in some shows weeks prior. Yes, we want you to come to Hamilton Wealth Advisors, but our main goal is that you have prosperity for your life, right? That God is taking care of us. We would love to do business with you, but if that's not the case, we want you to vet somebody that you go and make your investments with. We want you to get into the market, even if it is you doing it yourself. We don't necessarily, if you put the study in, right, then go ahead. But we advise you to get an advisor, right? So that you don't have to try to observe the wind. You don't have to try to regard the clouds, because you have somebody that has that almanac about investing, that has that spiritual almanac when it comes to your spiritual life. This is also the case of why we need good advisors. Absolutely. In everything that we do. All right. Because as you stated earlier, many of us, we have jobs and our jobs don't align with certain things that we do, so to speak. We are experts in what we do.
Correct.
but we can't be experts in everything.
Correct.
Right? So with that being the case, having a wealth advisor to give you the advice and set a plan for you to be successful is key. Also, when we work out, right, it's good to have a personal trainer or to get a prescribed plan for your body and what your goals are. No different than somebody in any sport. They have a coach, right? And in these college programs and college programs in particular, they have coaches. They have meal plans. They have strength and conditioning coaches, right? They have somebody specific for every single thing. The head coach hires and puts everybody in place, but the head coach does not do every single thing. The head coach has knowledge of what's going on, but the head coach doesn't go into the gym and do the strength training and the strength and conditioning. No, the head coach hires the right people to get those things done. And so that's what we want you to do for your life as well, is get the right people for the things that you need to get done. As Wilbur started this segment off with, is that what he said was, part of the problem is many of us have not given our lives to Christ. And we've pulled out of the church. We pulled out of community. We don't have anybody that we're accountable to, spiritually nor financially. And that's number one. You need to get into a place with somebody that will give you great spiritual advice, and also somebody that will give you great financial advice that will help lead you to where you need to go and the way that you need to sow your soul so that you can reap a great spiritual harvest. And then also financially, how you can sow your finances so that you can reap a great financial harvest. And so as we get ready to go to the break, we're going to come back in the close of the show and give you some more tidbits and tools to use to continue to be able to reap what you have sown, and also how you can do a better job even in sowing. See you back shortly. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton. You're tuned in to WATV 94.9 on your FM dial. Also, you find us on YouTube at Closing the Gap, The Truth. Closing the Gap, The Truth. Also, anywhere that you listen to your streaming podcast, you can find us at Closing the Gap Podcast, The Truth About Black Wealth. Today's show, we are talking about reaping what you sow. And we've been diving into some various things, Will, about, how to stay the course. And then also as you stay the course and you see the adjustments that need to be made, how to rebalance your portfolio, how to rebalance your spiritual life when you come into challenges, and how basically to handle volatility in life. Volatility is inevitable, right? That volatility is going to come. Change is going to come when you sowing your seeds in money, sowing seeds in a garden, when you're striving to live a life in a particular way. Everything is not going to stay the same every single day or every single year. But the thing is, how disciplined are you in what you do? How do you stick to the plan? Do you have a plan? Do you stick to the plan? And are you patient and give the plan time to come to fruition? And that's the key when we're talking about reaping what you sow, is understanding the time that it takes for things to come to pass. That nothing happens overnight, but you have to be patient in the process, because patience is a virtue, right? And we must all be patient. Number one, be patient with yourself. Too many times we rush ourselves in things, right? We're too hard on ourselves many times. We don't celebrate our successes like we should many times, and as a result, we end up having lack of discipline as a result of that, because we feel that we haven't done enough and things are not moving as they should. So we want you to be patient with yourself, continue to follow your plan, get good advice moving forward in everything that you do. And as we move to this last segment of the show, we want to talk about how you can become resilient, like the type of habits that you need for resilience and the type of knowledge that you need when it comes to your investments and following through on the things that you are investing in? How can you reap what you've sown and be patient with your sowing process? Because many times we don't reap because we're not patient with what we've sown. We want the seed to jump up time we put it in the ground. And that doesn't happen with anything. Anything that's worth having takes time. And first of all, you have to have an understanding of what it is that you're doing, right? When we talk about, we're talking about spiritually, when we tell people to pray, we tell people to trust in God, believe in Jesus Christ. You have to continuously read the word of God in order to have an understanding of who God is, who Christ is, and the directions in which he desires for you to go. That's why we strive each and every time that we come on the show to actually call out the scriptures that we are striving to quote to you, is because we don't want to just give them to you and tell you just to trust us per se. We want you to take the time, get your own Bible and read those scriptures for yourself. And then also pray and ask God to give you some more scriptures and understanding of what it is that you need to read so that you can have your life rooted and anchored in him, and that he will be able to direct your pathway. All right. That's what we desire for you, number one. Also, financially, Wilbur doesn't just tell you his own ideas, but he gives you the financial knowledge, the words and the concepts that dictate the market, that are within his purview of his job and his expertise, right? And I guarantee you, if any of you listen to this show and you pay attention to the concepts and the words that Mr. Hamilton tells you, and you go back and you look them up online, or if you go talk to a financial advisor yourself, I guarantee you that the majority of what has been said, you will find it to be true. You'll find those words and those concepts to be key parts of putting together a good financial plan. And so now we want to talk about discipline. We'll talk about discipline, because anything that you do, you have to have discipline to move forward. You have to be tested in what you do, right? And in discipline, what we mean by discipline is having a plan and following through on it. I say that simple as that. Having a plan and following through on it is being disciplined, and being resilient is understanding yourself and understanding what it is that you need to do. All right. Having your plan, talking to somebody like Mr. Hamilton, they have the full understanding of what it is that you need to do. And then also, as we said earlier, about being connected to some people, being connected to a church of people, a community, to have an understanding to help guide you in your spiritual life as well. So Will, if you would kind of give us some of those fundamentals that we need to hold on to have good discipline. Because summertime, and I want to say this, right? Summertime is usually a time that we kind of veer away from being consistent and everything. It's the fun time of it's the fun season. So in the fun season, we'll tend to, kind of let our hair back a little bit, so to speak, right? We tend to not be as focused on the things that we need to get focused on. So help us out today, stay consistent.
It's kind of fun. I, as you were talking, I thought about a story, and I thought about, something that happened to me earlier in my life, and, how life shapes you, and how, things that, may not seem as significant end up being a lot more significant and having deeper meaning as you get older when you look back at your life. And I had a teacher named Miss Turner.
Okay.
I was in 4th grade. And she made a statement one day in class. She, we was getting a little rowdy, enjoying class a little bit. And I think we had just got back in PE, and, we had a intense game of basketball on the blacktop, at PE, and got back, and we were still kind of, do a little trash talking. And, I was letting everybody know, hey, man, I got the best of you outside of PE today. And, and she told the class quiet now. She said, I'm going to tell y'all this. She said, it's very easy to be bad, but it takes great discipline to be good. And I didn't understand what she meant at the time, but the older I get, I think about that statement, and it's a lot harder to sit there and be quiet than it is to speak out of turn and act out of character. So those things are very easy to do. It's easy to fly off the handle. It takes a lot more discipline to be controlled, to be well thought, to be prepared, when it comes to how you handle life. And, she's one of the people that helped, that spurred on, I would say, the math gene, and kind of saw a math gene in me. And she had a summer tutorial program, and she lived right around the street from my house growing up. And she said, well, I want you to come to my house in the summertime, and we gonna prepare you for 5th grade math. And, it's the summertime. I'm saying, man, I'm just trying to go play some ball, and I want to go to the pool. I ain't trying to do no schoolwork. Dad, I don't want to go do no tutorial right now. I ain't trying to see no schoolwork right now. I just want to enjoy myself. But my mama intervened and said, you going. She said, he ain't got no choice. He's going. So I would walk around the corner and walk around the street and go to her house. And it was me and about 5 or 6 other kids. And there was another kid that was, a friend of mine. And, we were the only 2, African-American kids, that were there. And she was a black teacher. So we were there, and we were, kind of, working and doing some different things. And, and I decided, you know what? I don't feel like being here no more. So I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to go home. And I took off and I went home. And of course, she called my mom the next day and said, well, we decided to leave early before we were finished. And, he cost himself something. And I didn't know what she meant, So, I don't know if you all remember, back in the day, you used to have the supply cart where you get the pencils and the pens and all the cool stuff you can go to school and get. Now they have scholastic book fairs. We didn't have the book fair at my school. We just had what we call the pencil cart, where you can go and have the cool pencils and the pens and the stickers, and you may have a poster every now and then. But it was special to be able to work the supply cart. You had to be, exceptional to be able to be one of the ones that worked the supply cart. And I came back the next day, because my mom made me go back the next day. And she said, well, I was going to nominate you to work the supply cart. She said, but the way you acted showed me that you're not ready. So she allowed my friend to take my place, and she nominated him to work the supply cart. And it always bothered me because that lack of discipline that I showed in that moment cost me for being able to be in a position that I could have had the entire next year. So it showed me very early in life that your decision making, being disciplined. Now, it wouldn't have killed me to wait another 15 minutes until we were done and then go home. But I decided, what's she going to do? We're not in school right now. She can't send me to the office. I'm going to go home early. And it cost me from being able to be in position to do something that, I actually wanted. Because she said, I wanted you there because you're skilled with numbers. And I wanted to put you behind the counter because I thought you were a leader and you were also good with math. And from that point on, I was like, you know what? Not only did I want to earn that back in that position back, but I wanted to show her that she was right. So that was just a story, and I tell people those little things because you never know what's going to happen in life. And, I can look at myself today, being a business owner and, being a guy who turned out to be pretty good with numbers. And it's those things and that just those moments of discipline and lack thereof that can change your life. And unfortunately, in our community, I feel like we have far too many people that have made bad decisions because of either a financial predicament they were in a short-sighted situation, not making sure that they had a long-term view on life and understanding where God wanted them to go. So it was a moment in my life where I didn't know where God wanted me to go, but I'm thankful that he used those small situations to help get me to a point where I could see the bigger picture. But when we talk about, investing and, understanding, how to invest properly and prioritizing, what type of investments you should be a part of and understanding, I'll call it the emotional intelligence of investing, because most people make mistakes because they're overly emotional. They're listening to the noise. They don't know how to block out the noise. Well, first thing you got to find out is, evaluate the noise that you're listening to. Are you listening to credible sources?
Got it.
And from those credible sources, how many of those credible sources actually know you? How many of those credible sources actually directly speaking to you and know your situation? So if the people that you're listening to don't know your intimate details on what you're trying to get accomplished, there's no way you should be taking their financial advice because they don't know your goals, dreams, and objectives. They may know the surface level of who you are and what you're doing,
Yes.
but they may not know that you're going to have to care for a parent. They may not know that you have to take care of your brothers or sisters' children, and you can't do certain things, so you can't take certain chances in your finances.
Good.
So all too often, people are taking that advice
Yes.
from people who don't know the whole story, but they're only looking at the surface level. So we got to pull back the curtain and understand that investing, you have to have a philosophy. So right now we see a lot of people when, talking about you should get in the market, and it's always a great time to get in the market. I tell people you should always be thinking of how to get in the market. The best way I tell people to do is dollar cost average. Don't put all your money in at one time. Create a plan, and you got to be consistent with that plan and go in consistently, much the way you do currently. So within that, having a investment philosophy and strategy, because I ask people that, especially that are do-it-yourselfers, and I asked them, I said, well, okay, well, what are you investing in? Oh, I just look for good buys. Okay, well, how do you define what's a good buy? What is the investment philosophy behind why you're doing what you're doing? What are the indicators that you're looking at? Are you looking at economic, political? Are you looking at interest rates? What are you looking at that tells you when you should sell something, when you should buy something, when you should hold something? Because if you don't have a philosophy behind why you're doing what you're doing, you're always going to be in a state of constant change and turnover. And you're never going to be getting ahead because you're always having to revamp.
Yes.
Revamp. I tell people all the time, I said, we should never have to go back to square one if you have a solid plan.
Right.
Now, will we build on that plan? Absolutely.
Yes.
Will we make additions to that plan? Absolutely.
Correct.
But we should never have to go back and revamp and change and totally move out of one thing and move into something else. It should always be in addition to.
Right.
And far too often, people are constantly starting over. Why? Because they don't have a plan and they don't know how to manage their emotions, and they've listened to the wrong people.
Wow. All right, that's good. That's good. So taking the time and paying attention who you're focusing on, what you're listening to, and putting forth the work. Don't move too fast. Don't move too fast, but yet don't move too slow. Be prudent in your work.
Absolutely.
That you're doing. Understand and staying disciplined, have a disciplined approach. And as you just said, that what it made me think about is the foundation of a good plan is set, right? It's rock solid. But then as we move forward and life changes and the volatility in the market changes, now we just make adjustments to what we have on our foundation.
Absolutely.
Right. We just, we rehab the property. We just revise a few things. We update some things. We just may add some new paint into the house, right?
Yeah. Well, we tell people all the time, I said, look, the best way to know what to do is to look at what everybody else is not doing. So we have a herd mentality.
Okay.
So investing is, I don't want to say it's simple, but it's simplistic in nature.
Got it.
When you properly evaluate it and when you have a plan that you can stick to. The key premise of the stock market is what? To buy low and sell high.
All right.
Unfortunately, what happens all too often in our community is we buy high and we sell low because we're following the crowd. We have a herd mentality. So when everybody else was panicking last month, you're selling. Well, you're selling when the price is dirt cheap. Well, that's the time when you're supposed to be buying. And when the market is sky high, that's when everybody is trying to tell their cousin, sister, brother, and their friend, and they think they're a financial advisor because they make some money. Well, the market's just at an all-time high. Well, do you want to buy when the market's at an all-time high, which means you're buying at a premium? Or do you want to buy when the market's on sale?
Yeah.
So, but we wait till everything's going good, and then we want to be a part of the conversation. So we're paying a premium to get into the market at that time. Whereas now, when the market has done a reset, we're running away from the market because it's on sale. So, we operate too much from that herd mentality of not understanding. So I tell people a lot of times, I say, look, if you don't have an advisor, if you want to know the best thing to do the opposite of what you see everybody else doing.
Yeah, okay. So that helps us have a full understanding. So that reminds us to know who we are, know what we have,
Absolutely.
know what our goals are, and continue to keep that as our priority of what we need to do. Don't make our decisions based on the headlines of what's going on.
Absolutely.
Don't move because everybody else is moving. And that's what in Proverbs talks about, like a simple mindset. Right. So don't be simple minded. Don't believe anything, but give thought to the steps that you're taking. Make sure that you test what you're about to do and whether or not that aligns to your plan or not. So then in that, Wilbur, how would you, I would say what that makes me think about is, as we see people moving like that, right? And we have the herd mentality, because even, when you see somebody else running, you automatically just take off and run before you assess what's going on.
Yeah, we've all done that, huh?
Yeah. You just take off and run. So basically you're saying that, hey, we need to take the time and understand what type of trees, what type of fruit we're trying to bear. And we're talking about reaping what we sow. Don't just sow into everybody else and what they're doing. Make sure that we are sowing into our own plan and what our plan and desire is, right?
Well, absolutely. Well, I would say, like I said, in closing, making sure that, we have a plan, we wrote it down, we made a plan and made it plain. But from an investment standpoint, every person under the sound of my voice, if you're working with an advisor, you need to have what's called an investment policy statement. That tells you what that person should be doing, and more importantly, tells you what they should not be doing. And if you don't have one, you need one. And if you got one, make sure you get it reviewed. We'll see you back here next week.